Kaz, focus, okay? Skylar is trying to destroy me. I have to constantly look over my shoulder, knowing she could be right behind me, ready to strike.
Like right now? You screamed like a girl.
Yes, and I'd like to live long enough to scream like a woman.
Hospitals. They're scary, right? With all the needles and poking and the gowns that show your butt, it all sounds very bad, like the DMV. But what if I told you there was a hospital full of superheroes with amazing powers? You'd probably call me crazy. Hello amigos, Ramen coming at ya. Today we're gonna talk about a show about two normal humans saving the people who save the people. That show is Mighty Med. One of the best shows that showcase superheroes and why we love them so much. So, get ready to hero up and try not to touch anything in the hospital.
I don't know what this button does. That was awesome!
And let's dive into Mighty Med.
All her life she has seen, oh, the meanest side of me. He took away the prophet's dream for a profit on the street. Now she's stronger than you know, a heart of steel starts to grow. All his life he's been told he'll be nothing when he's old. All the kicks and all the blows, he won't ever let it show. Cause he's stronger than you know, a heart of steel starts to grow. You've been fighting for it all your life. You've been struggling to make things right. So a superhero learns to fly. Yeah, one turn the day into fly.
Mighty Med was a live-action comedy made by Disney XD. The show was a celebration of superheroes and comic books, but what made the show so great is that the superheroes in the show were really unique, as well as the villains. While the show is a comedy, there are times where the show can get very serious, with Kaz and Oliver using their knowledge of comic books to defeat the villain of the week and save people.
Coming to Disney XD.
Doctor, Flame Girl's code red.
She's supposed to be red. She's made of fire. I found this room in the D-Wing.
That's Titania's cyborg arm. Silver Shield is flatlining.
Just grab a power-up to give him an extra life.
That only works when he's in the game.
Right. Public full of Argentio.
Stat.
Can you believe we get paid to fix superheroes?
You get paid?
What makes the show stand out among the other shows is that, well, there is a laugh track. Some of the jokes are pretty funny. I mean, it's not groundbreaking, but it's pretty funny. But what really made the show stand out was definitely the writing. The show was made by Emmy Award-winning Jim Bernstein and Andy Swartz. The pilot of Mighty Med was created by Eric Dean, who made Kickin' It. If you want me to cover Kickin' It on my channel, make sure to comment and I probably will get to it. The pilot was also directed by Stephen Ingle, who made Disney's Ant Farm and The Big Bang Theory. And I'm gonna be honest, The Big Bang Theory has some good writing.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Don't judge me. I think the pilot for Mighty Med does a really great job establishing all the characters and villains and the world Kaz and Oliver live in. Now, I'll break down the pilot very quick and discuss each character in depth. Ready? Let's dive in.
Every day's an adventure. You never know by the looks on our face at the school when we enter. Leave class early, work at 3:30.
So the episode opens with Kaz and Oliver at the comic book store, The Domain. The Domain is essentially Kaz and Oliver's fortress of solitude. Kaz and Oliver use the Domain as a way to gain knowledge on the superheroes they are saving. The store is run by Wallace and Clyde, who are evil. But we'll get more into that later on. Let's continue. Kaz ends up doing a stupid stunt that ends with them getting stuck in a space shuttle. Kaz and Oliver are then sent to a hospital where they see a man wearing a trench coat. The man happens to be a superhero called Blue Tornado. Kaz forces Oliver to follow him into the closet. When they're in the closet, they trigger a plunger, which reveals a secret puzzle. Oliver is able to solve the puzzle. It happens to be the Caduceo symbol, the legendary healer of superheroes. The code reveals a secret doorway to a hospital filled with superheroes called Mighty Med. When Kaz and Oliver enter the hospital, they encounter Alan Diaz, a sometimes annoying person who doesn't really like Kaz and Oliver at first. We also meet Horace Diaz, who happens to be the legendary superhero Caduceo. We find that out in Season 2, Episode 7, The Storm Ends. While in the hospital, they also meet Skylar Storm, a person who becomes Oliver's love interest in the show. Don't worry, it doesn't really go anywhere. It's like an on and off type of deal. Skylar is at Mighty Med because she got her powers taken away by the main baddie of the show, the Annihilator, a villain who can take superheroes' powers and store them. Kaz and Oliver end up helping save a superhero's life by using their knowledge of comic books. After that, Horace Diaz allows Kaz and Oliver, who are normals, to be doctors. After that awesome day Kaz and Oliver had, they return back to school, where we're introduced to Jordan and Gus. Now, as much as I like Jordan and I feel her dynamic with Skylar is good, she doesn't really have any funny moments like Gus. Gus became a fan favorite that they made Gus a main side character in Season 2. Heck, they even added him to the Season 2 intro. Jordan, for the most part in Season 2, is nowhere to be seen. Just Gus. Where did she go? Dano snapped? Who knows? Just wanted to explain the Jordan and Gus thing since they are side characters in the show. Yeah, let's get back to the pilot. So at school, Kaz and Oliver promise to help Jordan with their science project and to keep Gus away from her. However, Kaz and Oliver have other plans to go back to Mighty Med for surgery. Jordan, Kaz, and Oliver meet up, then Gus arrives. Kaz and Oliver then use an excuse that Oliver's grandmother's house is on fire, and they need to go check the fire alarms. But it's not on fire. They end up questioning Kaz and Oliver, but then Kaz and Oliver end up going to Mighty Med anyway, to see a surgery take place as part of their test. Kaz and Oliver end up in the room with their favorite superhero, Tecton, who's hurt by megahertz, with a stop sign. I'm not gonna lie, pretty funny way to get hurt by a villain. A stop sign? I mean, come on. Kaz, being well you know, Kaz tries to prove himself by pulling the stop sign out of Tecton's chest. Oliver gets angry because he doesn't want to get cubed or fired. Yes, when a normal finds Mighty Med, they get cubed. It doesn't make sense, but this is a hospital run by a man who loves bridges. I am not kidding.
I love bridges!
Kaz thinks Tecton's healing factor will activate, but it doesn't. Kaz then decides to go to the comic shop to see if he can find anything on Tecton. So now we get back to the B plot, as Jordan and Gus are building a robot, and Gus accidentally sits on it because he thinks it's a rowboat. Man, say what you want, Gus has the it factor, and he is the best comic relief in this show. I just love it. Back over at Mighty Med, Kaz and Oliver are fighting. Then Alan walks in. Alan discovers what happened to Tecton. Alan gets all the staff and they start pouring in. Oliver tells Kaz to remember everything you know about Tecton. Kaz does and saves Tecton like a boss. After saving Tecton, they see themselves on the superhero news because Alan told them what happened to Tecton. Horace warns Alan that anybody could be watching and no Tecton was wounded. Alan says the words that no normal or hero wants to hear. Nobody will know. Megahertz then arrives because of Alan. Yep. Don't worry, he gets great character development in Season 2, just be patient. Megahertz is then attacked by soldiers, but Mega electrocutes the soldiers and defeats them. But Skylar, being a badass, tries to defeat Tecton without her powers. But Skylar isn't enough to defeat Megahertz. Megahertz then tries to finish Skylar, but is distracted when Kaz insults Megahertz and saves Skylar's storm. Megahertz then goes to find Tecton, but Tecton comes in and we begin an epic superhero fight between Tecton and Megahertz. Tecton uses the stop sign he was stabbed with and defeats Megahertz. And with that, Kaz and Oliver earn their place in Mighty Med. So now we cut to the ending that sets up pretty much this interesting conflict in the show. At the comic book store, Kaz almost tells Wallace and Clyde about Mighty Med before being interrupted by Oliver. Oliver tells him not to, but it is revealed Wallace and Clyde heard Kaz and Oliver talk about Mighty Med before. It is revealed Wallace and Clyde are secret villains who plan to find the hospital and destroy it. And with that, the plot is set. And that was the pilot. I think the pilot did a good job establishing Oliver and Kaz and the world of Mighty Med as a whole. And it does set up some pretty interesting plot lines that will follow the show. Now that you know the show's overall premise, let's talk about our main characters of the show. Let's get into it.
All these new issues and superpowers. If we didn't have to work, we'd be here for hours. Everybody say that we shouldn't worry, but have you ever seen superheroes on a gurney?
Kaz and Oliver are both the main protagonists of the show. Kaz and Oliver have been best friends since preschool, and both of them have their love for superheroes and comic books, which comes in handy saving superheroes. Kaz is more of a laid-back and very impulsive person. When Oliver and Kaz were both hired at Mighty Med, Horace wasn't too keen on Kaz, but over time, Kaz has proved himself to be a great employee. While Kaz at times can be kinda stupid, there are times when Kaz becomes very serious in certain situations. In the Season 1 episode, The Pen is Mightier Than the Sword, Kaz learns about a device called the Pandorian, a pen that can make whatever the user makes real. There is a downside, as the items the user makes vanish in 6 hours. Kaz steals the pen and draws a ton of fancy things for himself. Gus then gets the pen and draws a monster from his video game. Skylar and Oliver rush to the school and fight the monster. Kaz then realizes that if he rips the drawing, the items disappear, and with that, the monster is defeated. That's just an example of Kaz being smart in a dire situation. Let's talk about Oliver. Oliver is a smart guy. He thinks before doing anything dangerous. When Oliver started at Mighty Med, he impressed Horace and instantly got the job. Now, Oliver wasn't going to take the job because Kaz and Oliver are a package deal. So, Horace hires them both. Oliver has a big crush on Skylar, to the point where he can be overprotective and kinda creepy. But not too creepy, just like a funny Disney Channel kinda creepy. While the relationship with Skylar and Oliver seems to be on and off again, there are times where you can see they really like each other. Oliver has proven himself to be a viable member of Mighty Med. In Season 2's last few episodes, we find out Oliver's mom is the villain The Terror, a villain whose main goal is to rule the world. I mean, that's pretty much every villain's motive. Why can't we get a villain that wants to rule like the ocean? It's always gotta be the world. I'll talk about Season 2's final in the later portion of this video. Let's talk about our next main, Skylar Storm. Skylar Storm is a very interesting character, being the only hero without powers. While Skylar's main goal in Mighty Med is to get her powers, Her not having powers doesn't stop her from beating even the most toughest bad guys, like the villain Megahertz or the Annihilator. Skylar comes from a volcanic planet called Caldera, a planet that sometimes has weird traditions. Skylar has a ton of powers. We don't get to see the full extent of her powers until Season 2. Season 2 is where Skylar turns evil by the Annihilator. In this season, Skylar finds the Annihilator and gets her powers back. But her powers have been tainted, making Skylar's pink streak turn white. In the superhero world, in Mighty Med, when one hero's distinct characteristic turns white, that means they are evil. I like how Mighty Med explores what happens when a person goes evil. It's really unique. At the end, Skylar does turn good, but she doesn't get to keep any of her powers. Until Lab Rat's Elite Force. We will talk about that later. Now let's go over Alan. Now Alan goes through a pretty interesting character arc. At first, Alan's goal was to get Kaz and Oliver out of Mighty Med. Alan hates normos, which is what he calls people without powers. At first, Alan hates normos and doesn't give them a chance. But over time, Alan gets used to liking normos, and it's quite refreshing. Alan is scared to disappoint Horace. There are times when Alan gets carried away with power, like the episode where Horace goes and leaves for vacation. Mighty Med is then run by Alan, who takes over and then goes crazy with power. There are times in Mighty Med where Alan is proven to be very nice, especially towards Skylar Storm. Alan's power is telekinesis, and he can also shapeshift. Alan doesn't really have full control over his shapeshifting powers. When Alan gets scared, he pretty much becomes whatever weird animal you can think of. Alan does get some good growth in Season 2, where Alan finds out his dad is a normo, and he accepts that, and appreciates being a normo. Alan even attends school with Oliver and Kaz to get to know them more. It is revealed Alan's dad is a superhero called Optimo, and that he had to hide his superhero half to protect Alan, which is a good reason. Alan even gives his blood to save his dad, which is a nice thing for Alan to do. Alan went from a screaming child who will complain about anything to a character with good growth. Now we have our side characters Jordan and Gus. While Jordan for the most part appears in the show, she is not as great as freaking Gus. Gus was always so funny and weird. His character was bumped to main character in Season 2. Gus is pretty much the comic relief of the show. There's not really much to say about Gus, but he's just so freaking weirdly funny. Jordan is okay when she's with Skylar, but her jokes really fall flat sometimes. She just doesn't really have much of a presence as, say, Gus or Alan. So, I mean, that's pretty much all I can say about her. Let's talk about our last main, Horace Diaz. Horace is the chief of Mighty Med, and is the legendary superhero Caduceo, a person who can bring someone back to life 5 times. I know, weird power, but it's very useful. Horace used the 4th Caduceo on Skylar Storm, and the 5th one on Bridget. I'll describe Horace as the star of the show. Horace is funny, witty, and really cares for his fellow supers. And he really loves Bridges. I mean, the man's obsessed with Bridges. Horace never really told anyone he was Caduceo. Once it was time to save Skylar, he revealed himself to be the hero Caduceo. Horace's Diaz sister married Optimo and had a kid named Alan. Horace became in charge of his nephew Alan and protected Alan from Optimo's arch enemy, Razorclaw. Horace is by far my favorite in the show. There's some really good back and forth with Horace, Kaz, and Oliver. The jokes and banter just flow naturally when Horace is on screen. Now that we discussed the main characters, let's talk about some of our major plot points of the show, and I want to go over some of my favorite hero and villains of Mighty Med. Ready? Let's get into it.
But have you ever seen superheroes on a gurney? Will we save the world today? You never know. Will we all be safe today? You never know.
Throughout the show Mighty Med, there were some really great heroes and villains, each with their own unique powers and movesets. The show was also never afraid to go above and beyond with episodes like Pranks for Nothing, the episode where Kaz and Oliver start pranking people. But what makes this episode so special is that NBA legend Dwight Howard played a superhero called the Great Defender, a hero who can manipulate orbits and planets. Most Disney XD shows had a ton of famous NBA players and wrestlers as guest stars, and I'm gonna be honest, some of the guests aren't good actors. Yeah, I said it. It feels like sometimes they're just phoning it in. The only sports guest star that I liked was Tony Hawk on Zeke and Luther. And the only reason I liked him on Zeke and Luther is because he fit in the show. Don't know why Dwight Howard's in a show about superheroes, but with that out of the way, let's get back on track. Let's talk about some of the best heroes and villains of Mighty Med. One of my favorite heroes in the show is Captain Atomic. He's pretty much a Captain America of the show. Captain Atomic has an atomic yo-yo and is powered by an atomic battery that keeps him alive. Another hero is Tecton, who's like the Superman of the hero world. Tecton has a meteor on his chest that helps him heal instantly. As for my favorite villain, it's gotta be Wallace and Clyde. While later in the show they do become good so they don't get cued by Diaz, I do like the back and forth banter between Wallace and Clyde. They really have this great energy about them that I love so much.
Wallace. Remember how Horace Diaz erased our memory of where Mighty Med is? Do I remember Horace Diaz erasing my memory? Actually, I don't. He erased my memory of erasing my memory, remember? Actually, I don't.
When Wallace and Clyde get the amulet to fuse with each other, they become the villain called Catastrophe. With that, they lose their comedic timing, which sucks. Wallace and Clyde work better as two people split together. That's just me. Fun fact, did you know Patton Oswalt, Mr. Ratatouille himself, made an appearance in Mighty Med as the villain, the Exterminator, a villain who is out of his prime. This is by far the funniest episode of Mighty Med. In this episode, Wallace and Clyde host a villain intervention, and guess who appears? None other than Patton Oswalt, aka Ratatouille. And it is a really great episode, and it's on my list. I would rewatch it over and over again because, god damn it, I love Patton Oswalt.
You see that guy? That was me 10 years ago. The Exterminator. Yeah, I look pretty cool, but I was never happy. Not even as a kid. I had no friends, never got invited to a birthday party, never even had one of my own. Granted, I exterminated everyone in my hometown, which seriously reduced the number of parties, but anyway, I have come to terms with my rage and disappointment. In fact, today is my birthday. Another year without a party, and I am completely at peace with it.
Megahertz is another great villain who appeared in the show many times. Sometimes Megahertz is the comedic relief villain, but he is at times shown to be really powerful and willing to destroy Kaz and Oliver. In the ending of season 2, the danger factor is ramped up to 100 when we are introduced to Bridget, Oliver's mom. Turns out, Oliver's mom is a villain called Mr. Terra. Mr. Terra's plan is to get the Arcturian space rock and become supreme ruler of the world and keep Oliver safe. The thing about the Arcturian space rock is that not only does it attract villains, it kills the person who touches it. Bridget comes up with a plan. In order for her not to die when she touches the Arcturian, she would need Caduceo's last healing power to revive her, so she can keep the Arcturian's power. After Dr. Raff reveals who Caduceus is, Bridget starts to date Horace Diaz and tricks him into marriage. Once Bridget and Horace get married, Bridget gets the Arcturian space rock thanks to Alan being dumb as dirt. I'm not paraphrasing, that's an actual line from the show. Alan is dumb as dirt. Just saying. Bridget takes the power, forcing Horace to use his last Caduceus power. Bridget states that she did this to protect Oliver, but Oliver is conflicted, and an epic battle ensues. All attempts to fight Bridget fail, but something amazing happens to Kaz and Oliver. After touching the Arcturian space rock, they gain the ability to fly.
This is awesome!
Now, the show does end, with major plot points being unresolved. But hey, don't worry, the plot continues in the spin-off Lab Rats Elite Force, a combination of Mighty Med and Lab Rats. But before we get to that, let's take a brief intermission.
We'll be right back to Lab Rats Elite Force on Disney XD. A brand new show.
Mighty Med Hospital was destroyed.
None of us are safe.
On March 2nd.
I had an idea. Create one all-powerful team combining bionic heroes and superheroes, an elite force.
To fight the forces of evil.
Destroying your little hospital was just the beginning.
Get down!
You need...
We're coming for you.
An elite force.
What is that?
Shapeshifters.
Lab Rats Elite Force.
With the ending of both Lab Rats Bionic Academy, due to poor viewership, the best choice was to combine Lab Rats with Mighty Med, two shows with different tones and writing. Elite Force was made to spin off Kaz and Oliver to their own show. After the battle with Terror, Mighty Med is destroyed, and most superheroes have vanished. Davenport has an idea to split up the Bionic siblings and have Adam and Leo run the Bionic Academy, which I will say is a big mistake.
I'll stay at the academy.
Me too.
Okay, grab your gear, get going.
Hey, don't worry, guys. We'll be back together before you know it.
Wait.
Hey, it doesn't matter where we are. We'll always be a team.
Yeah.
So, after Davenport splits the Bionic siblings, he decides to take Chase and Bree to form a new team of both Bionic and superheroes. At first, that sounds great. I did enjoy Oliver and Kaz learning to use their powers, but the show never showed the progression of Kaz and Oliver. It just showed them using their powers casually. And that's the problem. Kaz and Oliver feel more or less shoehorned into a show that felt like it was meant for Adam, Bree, Chase, and Leo. While the show was meant to be a Mighty Med spinoff, both shows have different writing styles and central themes that make them unique. Lab Rats was more of an action comedy / drama, and Mighty Med was a superhero comedy. While Mighty Med did have some serious moments, the show never lost focus on the characters and the world building, and introducing new superheroes every other week. Mighty Med did have some episodes that continue after another, but the tone never felt too dark. Lab Rats, on the other hand, in season 3 became more serialized. That's not a bad thing, and I enjoyed it, but when things got dark in Lab Rats, it really got dark. Now, when you combine both Mighty Med and Lab Rats, you get this show that doesn't know what it wants to be. There are episodes like The Super Code, a episode that shows how easily the team can split up and be torn apart. Or the episode The List, a very dark episode that shows Skylar's friend Crossbow getting killed by Roman and Riker. Don't worry, she doesn't die, but still very dark. Lab Rat's Elite Force always felt just very dark, and the atmosphere didn't really help, mostly because the villains seemed to kill all the supers, which is okay, but Roman and Riker seem to be more powerful. They can easily destroy the Elite Force. For God's sake, the location Davenport put the home base is a building with his face. It's not hard to find the location. The location doesn't feel hidden like the Bionic Academy or the basement. Now, this show does end with a cliffhanger with no real resolution. Yep, they couldn't even finish the saga. Disney canceled the show due to low ratings. Now, Elite Force is not all bad. I did enjoy the episodes where Principal Perry were in. Some of my favorite episodes of Elite Force are the episode where Perry conquers her fear of tightroping, or the episode Need for Speed, where Skylar and Bree race to see who will make a better spokesman for a shoe commercial. These episodes seem like an episode with actual thought put into it, but following the episode after were not my favorite. The Skylar Storm saga was good, but that's pretty much it. Elite Force will be the ending for both Lab Rats and Mighty Med, two shows that should have never been combined. And that was a look back at Mighty Med, a show that celebrated superheroes. It embraced its world and characters. Kaz and Oliver have a friendship that can be described as Batman and Robin if they were helping saving the people who save people. And if I didn't mention it before, the intro is also a bop. The intro really makes you hyped for the show, which is very hard to do. With that being said, who are you? I'm Raven. Please make yourself welcome. Raz, is he one of your friends? Well, he looks just like me, and there's no explanation. And he just called me his creator not too long ago when I opened the door. So, yeah. With that being said, my name is Ramen. That's a clone. And guys, have a good night.
But yeah, game aside from the games, I guess we're gonna be like talking about, you know, No Way Home and shit. And I'm looking forward to it. It's kind of weird that they waited so fucking long for like a trailer to the point where like it got spoiled first. I thought that was pretty weird. And
we literally got the pre-trailer.
I'm excited about
Who's the super cool cop? It always gets the bad guy. Donut boy! That's me, yeah. He brings a delicious assortment of sweet delights. Donut boy! Got a creamy filling